I'm telling you, we're having a blast today at this show. We're here with Rick Kustich. I'm sure most of you know who Rick is by now. For some reason, he's synonymous with Great Lakes salmon and steelhead. I can't imagine why. He's only written a couple of books on the subject. Rick, how you doing, brother?
Very good.
Yeah,
how are
man.
you today?
Good to see you.
Good to see you, too.
Jeez,
it's been a long time.
Yeah, I ran into you on the river about 10 years ago. It was on the Salmon River.
Yep.
It was the Big Bend pool just above the refrigerator hole. I remember. You had gotten out your first book by then.
Yeah.
Great book. And I understand you got a couple of new ones here in the making. You're already done. What's this one here you're looking at?
Well, we have Advanced Fly Fishing for Great Lakes Steelhead. It's released, I think, in 2013. I think what this one provides, different than some of my other writing, is there's more on swinging a fly and spay fishing and things of that nature.
Technique of spay stuff. In fact, we want to talk about a little of that.
Yeah.
It can get a little technical.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very confusing.
Yep.
So I imagine this clarifies a lot.
That's what I've really tried to do with it, is try to dig into the details and try to make it a little more simple for everybody.
That definitely needs to happen.
Yeah.
And I also see you've got a book on muskie fishing as well now. You're doing the muskie thing.
I've had a lifelong passion for muskie. I mean, as I start even in that book, the thing that really got me interested in these fish is when I was a young kid going into a fishing club right on Grand Island. And there was a mount on the wall. I always remember this. I was about probably 6, 7, 8 years old. And this gigantic fish on the wall with big protruding teeth. And I was just shocked to find out that swam in the same river that I was, swimming in. And so ever since then, at that point, I said, hey, I have to be able to catch one of those. And I started out spin fishing for them when I was a teenager, and then evolved into muskie fishing, in the late 80s.
We've got one hanging on the wall at the shop. It was at a garage sale, believe it or not. It was about a 57-incher, and it's quite formative. Yeah. I don't even know if I'd want something like that in the boat with me.
Yeah, right.
I mean, catching them on spinning tackle is one thing, but having one on a 10-weight, that's got to be unbelievable.
And it's just such a challenge. I mean, from the casting aspect, the tying aspect, and just the mental preparation that it takes to be able to go day long, and fishing and pursuing muskies. They're not easy to catch. No,
but getting back to your roots, let me ask you this: what do you see the future for Great Lakes salmon and steelhead these days? What's going on in your mind? What would you like to say to us?
I think, well, right now, I think the future looks good. I think that some of the lakes, particularly Lake Erie, Lake Ontario, I don't think they have the carrying capacity that they did 10, 15, 20 years ago. I mean, I think it's kind of evidenced by the size of the fish and and at times some of the numbers of fish. But I think overall, I think water quality has improved over the last 15, 20 years, 30 years. I do think that the future is bright for steelhead fishing. I think there's a little greater emphasis on wild fish development in certain parts of the Great Lakes, which I think is a real positive, and certainly greater emphasis on catch and release these days, which I think really helps the fishery as well.
That's hopeful, because here at Lake Ontario, we're kind of concerned about the forage base and food supply for them. And so, but I think you're right. I think the future probably looks good. They've got a handle on most of what's going on with the exotics. I see you're tying some tube flies.
Pretty much, yeah.
You're doing a lot with tube flies these days. I mean, what's going on with the tube fly revolution? I see more and more of those now.
I think that the biggest thing with the tube is that so basically for anybody that doesn't know what a tube is, instead of tying on the actual shank of a hook, you're tying on a tube which is hollow, and you're going to tip it through the tube, tie it onto a hook at the other end, and slide it up into the tube. The advantage of it is I'm able to place the hook really anywhere that I want in relation to the materials. So for steelhead a lot of times take the fly from the rear, maybe even only the rear quarter of the fly. So if I can have my hook positioned at the very end of the fly, that's going to result in more hookups.
It's probably easier on the fish, I imagine, too.
It is. You're using small or short shank hooks.
Yeah.
So the other thing with the short shank hook is it holds more fish than longer shank hooks. There's less leverage. So between the two things, getting more hookups, holding on to the fish,
it makes a lot
better.
of sense.
It makes a lot of
No
sense.
question about it. I still kind of miss the classics, the Skycomers, Sunrise, Brad's Brat. In fact, John Chewy's book that he just did on classic steelhead flies is a wonderful thing. It's a lot about our history with regards to the flies that we tied back in the day. But
it's a really good book as well.
Oh, the old classics,
But
the tube flies are amazing.
And then the tubes, and I'm also tying on shanks as well. So you got shanks, so that it's a similar fly in a different style, but the hook is on the rear as well.
Okay.
So it's a shank with wire running to the hook.
It's like a stinger hook. Almost.
Yeah, it is, and that's the only hook on there, and it's at the rear again. So if the fish kind of short takes the fly, you get them.
Hey, I know you mentioned in this book, we're talking a lot about spey fishing. Do you talk about switch rods? And do you really need a spey rod on the Salmon River? I mean, come on.
I don't think you need spey rods have changed so much over the years. I mean, you go back 15, 20 years ago, and almost every spey rod was 14, 15, 16 feet in length.
Yeah.
Big, heavy rods for 9, 10, 11 weight lines. Yeah. I mean, that's all changed so much now. There's lighter rods, even 6 and 7 weight rods that are built for 11 and a half or 12 feet in length. I mean, match real well to the salmon. So you don't need
you don't need the cannon.
You don't need a huge rod. And and as you mentioned, just some switch rods, one that you can go back and forth, high sticking with, but also can use it to spey cast with. An 11-foot switch rod can work real well on a river like the Salmon as well.
We've had a lot of success, sort of moderate success these days, with restoring the Atlantic salmon back to some of the Great Lakes trips. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's great. I mean, I think it's particularly in Lake Ontario, makes a lot of sense since they were native to that watershed. I know that it has been it's been something that's been in process for a long time, and it really seems to gel entirely. But it is certainly nice that there does seem to be some success, and I would love to see it.
I'm loving it, man. I have yet to catch one of them.
Yeah.
But you see people that do get them in the spring and in the fall. My goodness.
Every year it seems to be getting better and better. Absolutely. Yep.
Good seeing you.
Okay. Good seeing you too. Thank you.
All right. Hey, we're here with Buzzy from Metuchen, New Jersey, and he's going to be tying us. What are we tying today, Brad?
I'm tying a small albacore fly that a lot of my clients up in Rhode Island and North, they like to use. It's just a small little albacore fly. It's tied on a Gamakatsu C14S glow bug hook. So we start off by attaching fine mono thread. We'll put a little bit of Zap-A-Gap or any type of CA glue on the shank. This happens to be the Loctite brushable. Now I'm going to take a small clump of, it's a product I've been marketing for a couple years. It's called Candy Crush. It's a replacement for the old Isaboo that they stopped making. We'll use it in these albacore flies and a lot of the surf candies we use it for. So just a little bit on the top of the hook.
I like the way you loop that around the thread before you tie it in. I've never seen that done before.
Yeah, we loop it around just because now I can control where it goes. We'll just take a little bit of laser dub in pink. Fold it over itself. So this will show up in the middle of the fly. Now for this one, we're just going to take a couple strands of it's called lateral scale. All right. We wet it down so we can control it a little bit better. I'm going to fold it in half, attach it to the back of the hook, It's just a little half hitch. So I can use this stuff or Bill's body braid. It's not cooperating.
It's a lot like life, isn't it?
Oh gosh. You tie hundreds of these things a year. All right, so we'll just palmer this around the shank. Like I said, we can either use the lateral scale or Bill's body braid in silver. Now the top of this fly is more Candy Crush. We'll typically tie these in all white. This happens to be olive and tan. Goes right on top. Now at this point, all the tying's done. Now, this is the hardest part of this fly. Put a little bit more of the Loctite on it. So now we're going to put the eyes on. I'll just peel them off of the paper backing they come on with my razor blade. Stick the razor blade on and push. And this is the worst part of this whole fly. Now we're going to take some of the Solar Res thin, finish off the head. Hit it with the light. I'll go back, put a little bit more on. Now when we trim it, first thing I'll do is I'll cut it to length. Spread out all the fibers. And then trim each side. And that's it.
Very nice. Yeah, get a close up. Yeah, let me zoom in on that. Thank you, Brad.
Oh, you're welcome.
Very nice, very nice. Now that's for albacore?
Albacore is what we normally throw them for. We throw them off the beach, or we throw them off boats, or off the jetties.
It's a small hook.
It's a small hook, but it's the same hook that the freshwater guys go after all the steelhead with.
Yeah, the C14S.
C14S Globo hook. It's very
nice.
You won't straighten it out.
No, I know.
And we tie these from 2s all the way down to 10s. So it's a small albacore fly, but sometimes that's the size you need.
Thanks again.
holy shit. But the bigger fish were too smart. They'd say, oh, they get their attention, but they'd come out and look at it.
You know, we're really fortunate here to be with Dave Brandt today. And whenever you think of the Catskill School of tying and fishing, he is synonymous with that group of anglers. Dave, how are you, man? Dave Brandt.
Great. How are you?
Good. Yeah, it's good to be here. I'm looking forward to spring, man.
Well, on paper,
Yeah,
it's here,
yes.
but it's going to be a while before we're fishing Hendrickson's, I think.
They're still ice fishing, for crying out loud.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, I got to tell you, I see a lot about the Catskill style of dry flies, and of course your name always comes up when that conversation happens. Are people still using traditional Catskill dry flies like Quill Gordons and March Browns, or is it giving way to the Comparadun and the no hackle style and the Thorax flies? What's the scene according to Dave Brandt?
Well, it is giving way, but not as much as most people think. It's we're still fishing them. A lot of us are. I fish a lot of parachutes. I fish a little clinkhammer style thing for the olives in the flat, cold waters.
Yeah.
But basically, still fishing a lot of them. Fly Tire magazine a few years back did an article and it said our Catskill dries obsolete. And the guild sicked our newsletter man at the time from Elmira. We sicked him on Klausmeyer, and he wrote a scathing letter to Fly Tire as if Fly Tire had said Catskill flies are obsolete, not are they. And David told me later, Klausmeyer, that he never had a more controversial article in there than that one.
That was kicking the hornet's nest for sure.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Stirs up readership.
Sure, yeah. Well, I tell you, 3 years ago, my biggest brown in the Delaware came out of traditional style sulfur. Okay,
Love it.
I got to tell you that. All right, so I
love
still
it.
use them.
Yeah, I use them a lot, and the sulfur is one I do like to use, although I do fish parachutes for the smaller version. Sometimes the sulfur is a funny fly. We're going nuts with stuff, and once in a while I thought I was doing something wrong, like the hackle on this way is going to put the fly lower to the water and then tying it with a shiny side, all those kind of things. And I finally put a traditional on and banged a fish that I've been looking at for 20 minutes. So you never know, but they do still work. In fact, Al Kuchis said one day, he says, if it ain't got a trailing shuck, it's not going to catch fish in my water.
That's a profound statement.
Well, you know what I really ended up thinking, and I'm glad that we were having a chat about that very thing. I think the tails that we put on all our traditional dries are in fact a trailing shuck. None of those mayflies got their tails in the water.
Interesting.
I think we've been fishing a trailing shuck without knowing it or calling it that all along.
Yeah.
So I'd almost say, okay, maybe you're right.
Yeah, I mean, how else could you perceive it as being? I mean, it's in the water.
right.
It is trailing behind the fly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very sparse, and I could see that as being perceived. There's so much theory here that you could ponder.
You remember the film The Way of a Trout?
Yes.
When that guy finally sat down on the bank, making a ruckus 10 feet from one that kept rising, I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah.
But he put enough tail material on that one that he tied because he didn't have any more like it for about 3 flies. Even then I was starting to think about that. Maybe it is a trailing shell.
Boy, that was one of the first videos that ever came out. I think Scientific Anglers produced that. It was pretty rough.
It was.
My memory.
Bing Crosby put a lot of money in that film. It
No
was rough,
kidding.
but it was good.
He was a fisherman. He was a fly fisherman.
Oh, yes.
That's right.
Oh, he was big.
Yeah.
But he happened to be on the golf course when he died.
Yeah.
Golf is the ruination of an angler.
Yeah, there you are. I see you got a couple of DVDs out.
Yep.
This is nice. This is traditional Catskill dry flies. And then this one here, tying
Almost
dry
more
flies.
the same.
Yeah. Those are nice.
Well, it's a good thing I got them because they'll pay the gas money in the hotel.
Sure.
Because nobody knows me. Nobody knows Catskill flies anymore.
True.
So we have to keep it reinvented, and this helps.
I think you're the man. Hey, let's talk a little bit about wet flies. We're graduating maybe to the old style wet flies, okay?
Wow.
You see, Mike Valla just did a couple of books on traditional wets. They're beautiful. And they're, the Parmachee Bell, the Silver Doctor, the Professor, all these colorful attractor patterns. You think, in a way, fly fishermen are kind of reverting back to that school, maybe in some ways? I mean, you see hot spots incorporated into some of the nymph patterns these days.
That's a good point.
That's an attractor. Let's face it. You put an orange dot on a nymph or a caddis, what is that? I can only see that as an attractor
about
fly
right.
at that point. So maybe we're kind of going back to old school a little with the wet fly
I know
scene.
we are. In fact, maybe even more so than that with soft hackle wets. That's enjoying quite a renaissance, and of course catching fish, both here and in Europe. So
we had John Shaner here a couple of years ago talk about soft hackles. He tied a beautiful soft hackle for us. And yeah, I mean, those things are timeless. If you're not fishing soft hackles, there's something wrong with you. Yeah, they're timeless.
I just read an interesting piece of controversy. I know Ralph Graves, when he first got into them, he said if it's got more than about 7 barbs, it's too much. I was just reading a soft hackle book where the guy said he likes them with 2, 3, 4 turns.
Really? That's pretty
soft
full.
hackle.
That's pretty full.
Yep.
I kind of like them on the sparse side. They seem to have more action in the water, but to each his own. When it comes to fly tying theory, let's say. Hey, talk about the Catskill fly fishing, the quality of the fly fishing today as it was opposed to maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago. What have you seen over the years?
I think if I look back at 25 or 30 years ago, I would probably have to admit that the fishing is not what it was then. But after having said that, I used to fish up through Horsebrook, down by Hendrickson Pool, just from Horsebrook up through there. And we used to catch oodles of fish, and that slowed and slowed and slowed. And I had a student in there year before last, and I caught the first 20-inch fish, never got below me, that I had seen in that water in years. So, I don't know. I think the fishing is better than it used to be in a lot of places, but it's also under the gun for more things, more problems than it ever was before. Climate change, perhaps, being among those things. The one thing that used to hurt a lot, I think we're getting a break in now, and that's fishing pressure.
Pressure?
We're losing pressure, I think.
No kidding.
Well, they tell me the young people aren't fishing.
Really?
They're doing stuff like this. They're virtually fishing.
The
but
younger
not
people,
actually.
okay. But I still see a lot of guys our age down there, maybe a little younger. But you think the pressure's kind of subsiding?
A little bit.
Huh. That's the first time I've heard that.
Yep. And I suppose that might be a regional thing too, where I see less, there might be more somewhere else. So I don't know. I think the advent of the no-kill moved pressure around a lot.
Okay.
20 years ago, and that's probably all settled down. I think a couple of the places I know of where they want no-kill, I don't think they need no-kill. And I'm an advocate for if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right. Yeah, those are words of wisdom for sure. You know, a few years ago, you gave me a fly. It was made from one feather. It was a one-feather dry.
Oh, yeah.
It was an interesting pattern, I have to admit. I have it still. I use it as a model.
That's great.
It's a beautiful little fly, though.
I did one of them for Mike Valley. You mentioned Mike. I think I got one of them in the book. It's either that or the two feather.
Yeah, this is a really interesting pattern.
When that's a funny thing to look at. Harry's old two feather.
Yes, the Derby.
It was a wonderful fly, and it was made into a big deal by the likes of Al McLean and others.
Sure.
And it got quite a lot of notoriety. Walt Dette had a fly that was like his answer to Harry's two feather. And when you look at how it's constructed, hardly anybody ever wrote about it. But it's a neat fly, and it's got things working for it that Harry's didn't to make it even more indestructible. It's really a neat fly, and it's called his riffle dun. Look it up sometime.
All right, I will.
Walt Dette's.
You know,
Cool
that's
fly.
the cool thing about the Catskills. It's just never ending. The stories, the lore, the history, it's incredible. It's just a plethora of information, and you want to see it preserved for sure.
That's one of my things. I just happen to be living close enough and being forward enough, or whatever I am, so that I wanted to go meet those people, and I got the benefit of knowing a great deal of the older icons, and it all helped.
Yeah.
I was just lucky. And then working for Joan Wolfe and Lee for 34 years this year, that isn't a bad thing to have had happen to me.
Sure. Yeah, being in the right place at the right time.
Yep.
No doubt, Dave.
Yep, it's true.
Hey, it's been great, sir.
Well, it's
Thank
been
you.
my pleasure.
Yes, sir.
Good to see you. It's good Trout Unlimited is alive and well in Syracuse.
You know, we need this kind of emphasis, especially considering what they represent. You know, Casting for Recovery, Project Healing Waters, the Carpenter's Brook, Friends of Carpenter's Brook, all these conservation initiatives. This is more than just tying flies. I always like to remind people of that.
That's a good thing to remind them of.
No, great. Great for the community.
Well, it's good seeing you.
Thank you, sir. Yep. Hi, I'm Al Dare from Mickey's Bait and Tackle, and we're here at the 7th annual Iroquois Trout Unlimited Tie One On, and we're having a blast today. We just had a great interview with Dave Brandt, and we did Buzzy, and we did Rick Kustich as well, and you got to be here. If you're a fly tyer, you have to be here. It's been said fly fishing's the most fun you can have standing up. Well, it stands to reason that fly tying's the most fun you can have sitting down. So, and remember, this is for a couple of worthy causes as well. We've got Casting for Recovery, we have Project Healing Waters, and we have Friends of Carpenter's Brook that are all benefiting from this. So this is more than just tying flies. Buy a lot of tickets is what I can tell you. Support these people. This is going to go on for a while, I hope. And spring's around the corner. Trout season's opening up in about a week, and I'll be out there with the fly rod on 9 Mile Creek flailing away. Hopefully the water won't be too brown. Again, thanks for being here. Al from Mickey's saying so long.